What is the difference between becoming a police officer in the past versus now? How hard was it then versus now? And how do you get through it? Let's discuss. Hey, before we get started, I have two gifts in the description for you. One's the Getting Started workshop. It's going to walk you through every phase of the hiring process. There's some hidden bonuses in there to include the new police candidate eligibility exam. Take it, enjoy it, see where you rank. Next is the free coaching call with myself or any other instructor. We have so many time slots available for you now to fit your schedule. Getting hired. Getting hired versus now versus then. Understand it's significantly harder to get hired now versus 15, 20, 25 years ago. Significantly harder. The process has only kept evolving. It's only kept getting more detailed. It doesn't matter if you've talked to former law enforcement officers and they say, no, it was way difficult. 20 years ago, the caliber of candidate had to be significantly higher. I adamantly disagree with that. That's my personal opinion. And the reason is for this. There is so much more information now. There's so much more ways to evaluate candidates. So a candidate that was hired, 25 years ago or even in the 90s, 30 years ago, they didn't have to go through, they may have had the same similar steps, or they may have had some of the same similar steps, not all of them, but the information that was accessible. So let's just start with social media, right? What's out there on social media? The fact that your entire life for the last 20 years potentially is public, right? You've probably posted some type of public aspect of your life at some point. And even if you delete the account, or even if you delete the photograph, or if you make it so that it's inactive, there's still probably a chance that myself or a background investigator might be able to access it in some capacity. Maybe it was shared with someone else. Maybe someone else tagged you in the photo and you've removed the tag, right? Because you don't think it professionally reflects you now. Well, that's still out there. It's still accessible. We can still get to it, right? There's a lot, even more going into video. A lot more things are recorded these days. More photographs, excuse me, I can't speak to that. More photographs, more videos. That information is out there. It's more accessible. I can go through your camera reel and maybe not see something that's on your social media, but maybe you left something in your camera reel that you didn't want me to see, or maybe that doesn't professionally reflect you and it's from 10 years ago, right? When you had your phone back then and you kept it out of nostalgia. There's a lot of information now versus then. And then on top of that, that information is used in different aspects. The psych exam, even if they had a psych exam in their hiring process 15, 20 years ago, was nowhere close to the in-depth level that it is now. So do I think it's harder to become a law enforcement officer now? Absolutely. I absolutely 100% think it's harder to become a law enforcement officer now. Do I think it's impossible? No, not at all. Because while times did change, the big thing is that so did the hiring process in regards to, we understand that, if I hear an older law enforcement officer say, oh, the quality of candidates has went tremendously down because so-and-so has a, I don't know, so-and-so used marijuana, 10 years ago. And they say, marijuana wasn't allowed when I was going through the process. Maybe it wasn't allowed, but maybe more officers lied about using it, right? So there's that concept of it. And it'd be very difficult to convince me otherwise of it, for the sheer fact that I know officers that have stated that. I know officers that said, oh yeah, I would never make it through the screening process now, or I would never go to become a cop now because you have to display your entire life. Yeah, that's what a background investigation entails, right? That's what getting a clearance is for. So yes, then versus now is tremendously different, and in my opinion, more difficult. So how do you combat those things, right? Well, first and foremost, when it comes to information that you have out there that's publicly accessible, you want to mitigate it to the point to which it only positively reflects the professional you are now. I'm not telling you to go out there and hide and delete things. That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying if something doesn't professionally reflect you and it's not who you are, what's the purpose of retaining it or keeping it? It's time to get rid of that. If I had a account from when I was, a teenager and it just has me doing, foolish things with friends, but I haven't done that in 20 years. Why would I have that? It's nostalgia. That could be the only issue, right? That would be the only reason to keep it is to look back on and say, wow, we were dumb kids at the time. But take into consideration how that reflects on you if someone looks at that. Maybe someone can't process, hey, this was someone, 20 years ago. No, they see that now that's ingrained in their head and they're looking for any other type of activities that could convey a pattern from your past to your present, right? So going back to the then versus now, that wasn't accessible. Not everyone had cell phones, not everyone had, video at the tip of their fingers, and not everyone had to convey their each aspect of their life or each aspect of their. I don't want to stick with social media, but ultimately social media, what you're using on social media, what you're putting out, your public information, right? Whatever's out there publicly. Then let's go into dating apps, right? Dating apps. Those are information that they'll gain access to. What did you put on your dating app? Was there anything vulgar on there? Did you post a photograph or a comment that was inappropriate? Same thing with simple chat systems. Have you ever made an inappropriate comment on a political comment, on a Discord or on a Reddit thread or anything along those lines? That's all out there, and you're going to display and give usernames to your background investigator, to your hiring officials, and you're going to convey all that over. And if they find something that just doesn't properly reflect who you are now, why have it? Right? Why have it? Get rid of it. It's not who you are. Just move on to the next stage of your life. And you should have did that well before even considering applying to law enforcement, right? If you're in the application process now, it is what it is, right? But if you're starting your phases or even still, if you're already in the application process, get rid of anything that doesn't properly reflect who you are as a person now. It's not needed. You understand you're going into a public view profession, right? A public service, not political, public service profession. Public. Everything you do is going to be scrutinized by the public. You should do your best to make sure that you are only presenting yourself in the proper public light, because that is what your life is going to entail moving forward. I find it difficult to hear a candidate say, well, this is what this is, and I don't know why they're looking at this. This is 10. Well, they're going to look at it. If it's there, they're going to look at it. You don't get to choose what's pertinent and what's not pertinent. That's their job, right? So you might as well just, if you don't feel it's pertinent, why have it out there? And if, like I said, if you're only keeping it for nostalgia, for memories, there better be a good reason, and you better have a good articulation for it in order for it to make or pass the level that you need it to under the scrutiny of the department's hiring process. And it is a very difficult hiring process. So what else is different between now versus then? A lot of the stuff that you're going to deal with, say, in your polygraph or your psychological or even your background phase, all that stuff has increased and improved. We found better ways to analyze candidates so that, we can make sure other candidates aren't lying, right? That's not you, but sometimes people try to lie or omit or hide stuff, and it's so simple to find. Now, a lot of times when I'm working with a candidate, it's not intentional. It's not intentional omission. What it is they just forgot something and they didn't put it down. And then unfortunately, a background investigator doesn't get to make that call because they've dealt with so much. And because the hiring process has been this way for so long, that a background investigator is taught by prior background investigator, yeah, when someone lies, it's most likely, or when someone fails to disclose, it's most likely omission or lying by omission. They're intentionally doing it. And that's all they can do, right? They have a limited amount of time to review so many candidates. They don't have time to deal with people who make a mistake. or intentionally lie. We just categorize everyone together. You don't want to be in that category. That's why you want to prep ahead of time. But as the time goes on, as it gets further and further, we find better ways to evaluate. And when I say better, I don't mean better for the candidate. I mean better for the department, right? We find better ways to go deeper into a candidate, to find out more information. We learn better interrogation techniques. All these things, excuse me, make it more difficult for the candidate. So when it comes to your specific hiring process, how do you prepare for it? Well, first of all, preparation, right? Getting all the documentation that you can ahead of time so that you can make it easier on your background investigator so that they don't have to deep dive and then you misarticulate something, right? They're going to deep dive anyway. There's no reason for you to give them a reason. If it seems that you're trying to hide something, even though you're not, they're going to deep dive into it, right? They're going to go down that rabbit hole and see what they can find. You can prevent that entire thing is if you're honest from the beginning up front and you articulate it properly and reasonable. That's the standard of law enforcement. I don't want to go down this rabbit hole because I always do when I get into the reasonable standard for law enforcement, which is going to be your entire career. Anyway, what I'm trying to tell you here is make sure that you're actually looking at what it is that they want to know. So, right? If they say, hey, have you ever had any law enforcement contacts? You're not going to leave out the fact that, yeah, I had a law enforcement contact from the school resource officer for, maybe bringing alcohol to school, right? You're not going to leave that out. You're going to, well, I was 16. Do they really need to know? Yes, they need to know about it. Unless it specifically states any time from 18 on, then yes, they need to know about it. If it states, your entire life, then you list it. These are things that we've learned and we've decided to kind of not decided, but we have added to the hiring process that makes it more difficult, versus 15, 20, 25 years ago. It's significantly improved on behalf of the department, not the candidate. Right. And it should be. That's why we have these rigorous hiring process, because we want good officers out there on the streets. The downside to it is in that, you get lost in translation. Sometimes you get a bad investigator. Sometimes you get a bad polygrapher. Sometimes you get a bad psychologist, right? Just like sometimes you get a bad law enforcement officer on a traffic stop. Every single profession has it. The big problem that you have is if you get that bad psychologist, how do you handle that situation? Back then, even if maybe they didn't even have a psychological review, maybe they did, but it might have just been do this test. I don't see any major red flags. Have you ever wanted to commit treason against the United States? It might have been simple. I'm not saying that it was that way for all the departments in the past. So before you get mad, that's not what I'm saying. But what I am telling you is we've taken everything that we've learned from all the departments across the country and even the world, and we've packed it into a more robust hiring process. Then versus now is completely different. Even though they say, oh, well, we've always had these same stages. Yes, but how in depth, how much information is out there now on you versus someone, 15, 20 years ago? The internet has been amazing. However, when it comes to the hiring process, for any background, it doesn't even just have to be for law enforcement, but it has opened the door to have access to a greater amount of information. And with that greater amount of information, it takes longer to review, right? If you have more information, it takes longer to review. So for you, if you're going through the process now, recommendations, like I was stating before, be prepared. Get all your documentations that you can get together. Have those ready to go. That way you're not waiting, or a hiring official is not waiting around for you. That's the number one way to get in their good graces. Be patient, but be willing to follow up every 4 weeks if you can, if you haven't heard anything. I mean, I'm talking complete radio silence. Make sure you're learning to properly articulate any type of hurdles. Hurdles could be a speeding ticket, could be substance use, could be a termination at work, could be a credit issue, anything. Learn to articulate them. And it needs to be reasonable, not your perspective, not, well, this would have never happened. Oh, I don't agree. No. Hey, here are the facts. This is what occurred. This is how I handled it. End of story, right? If they want more detail, they'll ask, and then you can possibly go into it, but make sure it's reasonable with whatever you say. There's a lot to it, right? There's a significant lot to this hiring process. That's why I've said it before. This is the most rigorous hiring process for any profession I've ever seen out there, right? But it's also the most rewarding when you make it through the entire process. And then, you get out there and you're serving your community. So from a percentage standpoint, or from a balance standpoint, I should say, it is the struggles of going through the hiring process don't even compare to the rewards of the success of going out there and serving your community. So it's disproportionate in your favor. So knuckle up for it, get ready, and go through the process as best you can. I'm always here to help. We have those gifts in the description for you. The Getting Started workshop is going to walk you through every phase of the hiring process, plus the new exams that we have in there, including the eligibility exam, as well as the free coaching call with myself or any of the other instructors. Use these. They're for you. I'll see you next time. Stay safe. Hey, before I let you go, I did want to ask real quick, if you enjoy this, know that we go in and we answer all the questions on YouTube. And then if you have any enjoyment from the podcast, from the audio podcast, no matter where you're watching it, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or any of the other platforms, please leave us a review and like and share it. That's how we get out there, and then that shows me that this is the content that you all want to see, and then it's actually being beneficial. So if you have a comment and you want to ask a quick question, you can ask it over on YouTube. We try to answer all of them for as long as we can, as well as any of the extra gifts that we have for you. But additionally, you can go on to our website. It's Armogan CT, so ARMOGANCT.com. And up there we have live free trainings that we do as well occasionally. And you can keep checking there and see if that's something that you want to jump onto. I hope this all helps you. As I said before, stay safe, and I'll see you next time.